Hi everyone, this is Ms. Grant going over parts of the expression notes for her class. This is what we're going to work on today. We're going to write our objective. We're going to make a foldable with some vocab words. We're also going to make a second foldable with some more terms and do some examples. Okay? So make sure that before you get started, you have your notebook in front of you. You should grab 2 purple pieces of paper from the worksheet bin. So you should have 2 purple pieces of paper and then a piece of green paper. Okay, so let's get started. So first we're going to, at the top of our paper, write our title, Parts of an Expression. That's what we're going to work on today. Our objective is I can identify and describe parts of an expression. So we should be able to identify given an expression and then describe those parts as we're identifying them. Okay. In order to work on the first part, we're going to have to make our first foldable. So you're going to take the first 2 purple pieces of paper. You're going to stagger them one on top of the other. And one paper should be slightly taller than the other one, so you should see a little bit of gap there. You're going to take the bottom of the paper and flip it up towards the other paper, so you should now have 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. I know it's hard to see with the purple paper. Once you make those 4 sections, you're going to fold. I know most students have made these in elementary school, so this should be kind of familiar to y'all. So these are the flip books. You should have the top portion, a flap, a flap, a flap, a flap, so 3 flaps. Okay, so it should look like that. We do want the fold on the top toward the objective. At the end, we are going to staple this in, but for right now, I just want to work on the vocabulary. So we're going to do a vocab word, an example, and the definition. So on the first flap, we're going to start with constant. That's going to be our first vocab word. And that's just on the top flap. I didn't flip anything. Our next title, our vocab word is going to be variable. The third flap is going to be coefficient. Coefficient. And our last one is going to be factors. So those are the 4 vocabulary terms on the purple foldable. So let's get started with the examples and the definition. When we talk about constant, the example I want to use is 7 plus W. When we talk about constants, we're talking about something that does not change. So which part of the expression here is not going to change? We know what it is. The value's not going to change. Nothing is being multiplied or divided by it. It's going to be 7. 7 is our constant. So a constant is a quantity whose value does not change. Does not change. A hint that I can also give when you're talking about constants, there is no variable with it. So no variable is attached. It's just the number. Now let's talk about variables. When we talk about variables, we are going to flip the constant flap up. And we're going to work in this section. I'm going to use the same example, 7 plus W. Now we're talking about the variable. The variable, as described in our previous lessons when you were watching the video, it is a letter that represents an unknown value. It's more commonly used as, or the most common one is X, but today we use W. So you can use any letter of the alphabet. So it's a letter that represents an unknown value. We don't know what W is, and we're not solving for it. In a couple weeks we'll be evaluating them, and then you'll figure out what W is, but right now it's just a placeholder for that unknown value. Okay? So it's a letter that represents an unknown value. And you can use any letter of the alphabet. You don't have to stick with X and W. You can use C and A and B and T. You can use whatever letter you'd like. All right, for coefficient, we're going to flip the flap open. So I'm going to use a different example. I'm going to use 4x, y. And that is x, the variable, not the multiplication sign. So what's happening in between the 4, the x, and the y is actually multiplication. Okay? So a coefficient, okay, is going to be that number that is being multiplied by a variable or variables. In this case, it's 2 variables. So it's just the number. The coefficient is just the number that's being multiplied by a variable or variables. Number that is being multiplied identify a variable, or plural, variables more than one. So it's just the numbers, not the variables, it's just the number. All right, our last one, factors. We should know the definition of factors, whether or not they have letters or numbers. Factors are two numbers that, when multiplied together, make a product. We more commonly see this in the GCF practice, but today we're going to involve variables with it. Going to use that same example for x, y, 4 times x times y. If I write this in expanded form, meaning with the actual multiplication signs in it, we have 4 times x times y. Remember, factors are the numbers that are multiplied together. So what's being multiplied together here? 4 is being multiplied, x is being multiplied, and y is being multiplied. So all three of these are going to be factors. And it's the same definition as the actual definition of factors, you're just including letters. So this is numbers and variables that are being multiplied together. So again, same definition, we're just now adding the variables with it. All right, easy example. So we're going to close our entire foldable here. We're going to pretend that we put a staple in the top of it. We're going to hold it down like it's a staple. And we're going to put the example underneath the foldable. So this is the example I want you to write down underneath the foldable. Identify all parts of the expression. So we have 3g minus 2h plus 1. So I want you to pause the video and try to identify as many pieces as you can of the expression, identifying the constants, variables, coefficients, and factors. If you want to pause the video and then hit play when you're ready to start. All right, I assumed you hit pause and now you've hit play. Welcome back. Let's identify parts of the expression. I'm just going to go down the foldable here. So the first one is constant. We're looking for any number whose quantity is not going to change. There's also no variable attached to it. If I look here, the only constant I have is this plus 1. So that's going to be my constant. Variables, remember, are letters that represent an unknown value. So if I'm looking for any letters here, if I see any letters in my math problem, those are my variables. And I see two letters. I see G and I see H. So those are going to be my variables. All right, I'm looking for coefficients. Remember, coefficients are the numbers that are being multiplied to a variable or variables. So now I'm looking for just the numbers that are being multiplied to those letters. So I should probably start looking at the letters. If I look at the letters, is something being multiplied by G? Yes, that's 3. So 3 is going to be my coefficient. If I look at my other variable, H, what number is being multiplied with H? That's going to be 2. So 2 is my coefficient. 1 doesn't have a variable, it's my constant, so my coefficients are 2 and 3. Oh, forgot my E. So I have 2 coefficients. And the last one, factors. So we're looking at numbers and letters that are being multiplied together. If I have a coefficient, I'm going to have a multiplication problem. If I have variables and my coefficient, I'm going to have a multiplication problem. If I have a multiplication problem, that guarantees me that I'm going to have factors. Okay? I'm actually going to rewrite this problem to make it a little bit neater for us. So if I rewrite this problem to identify our factors, I have 2 multiplication problems here. I have 3 times G and I have 2 times H, which means I have factors here. I've got 3 as a factor, G as a factor, 2 as a factor, and H as a factor. So those are all factors. All right, so that's the first step of the notes, and we're going to work on the second step. In your notebook, I need you to turn your notebook to a beautiful fresh page. So we're actually going to do 2 pages for this one. So at the top of it, you're going to label parts of an expression part 2, because it's going to be the second part of it. And you need to make sure you have that green piece of paper now, because now we're going to make our second foldable. And that green piece of paper, you're going to fold it in half. This is kind of like the accordion one that pops out like we did for exponents, but with more panels. So we're going to have 4 panels instead of 3. So we folded it in half, and now we're going to fold it in half again. Okay. So we fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. Okay. What you're going to do now is you're going to turn it, so you should have 2 ends right there. Take this end and just fold it all the way back. So I'll repeat. So you have it where you have both ends right here on the left hand side. You're going to take one of the ends and fold it backwards all the way back. So it should look like that when you fold it. And you're going to make a little, looks like a little M, little W. I know some of my kids have said, oh yeah, it's an M. Oh, it's a W. It's also a little tense, so you know. All right. This is our foldable. When we put down the paper, we actually want it to look like a tent. And this is the back end. We're going to fold it all the way down, and we're going to write on the front. What we're going to write on this one is the terms of the expression. This is our last vocabulary term. Terms of an expression. So terms, now we're talking about each part of the expression. So now we're separating it by different operations. So if we open our foldable all the way to the back, okay, we're going to write our definition of terms. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction. So they're not separated by multiplication or division. Those stay together. This is only separated by addition or subtraction. So the example that I want to use here, if we go to the first panel of the foldable, I'm going to use 5tm. This is the same as 5 times t times m because they're smushed together. Terms are separated by only addition or subtraction, so I'm actually going to put a plus sign in the crease. I'm now going to have 6 divided by t. And again, terms are separated by addition or subtraction, so I'm going to put a subtraction sign in the crease, and then I'm going to put my 7. So our terms in this case, again, are only separated by addition or subtraction, so you have to look at your addition and subtraction signs. What is to the left of the addition sign, what's to the right of the addition sign? This is all a term, this is all a term. If you look at your subtraction sign, what's to the left of the subtraction sign? This is a term, and whatever's to the right of it, that's also a term. So you keep going until you find another addition or subtraction sign. So 5 times t times n is a term, 6 divided by t is a term, and our constant 27 is also a term. These are all of our terms. Easy. We are going to glue this into our notebook. You want to put glue on the back of it, and it's just going to stick right underneath your title there. Okay. Underneath, I also want you to write this example. Identify all parts of the expression. That's for my Mod 1 class. My 1 class, if you did this one, because we didn't have time in class, if you did it correctly, you'll get extra credit points, but only for my Mod 1 class. So again, everybody is to write this example down. Identify all parts of the expression. We have 1/2 times a plus b minus 3c. If you want to take a moment and try to identify as many as you can, or many parts as you can, that'd be great. Hit pause on the video to do that, and when you're done, come back to the video and we'll go over it. All right, I assumed you hit pause. Welcome back, you hit play. We are now going to go over parts of this expression, and again, I'm just going to go down the purple foldable and then the green one, okay? So let's start with constant. Do I have any numbers whose quantity does not change? I actually do not, okay? 3 is not a constant because 3 is being multiplied by 3, which means 3 is going to change depending on what c is. 1/2 is also not a constant because this right here is multiplication. 1/2 next to the parentheses is multiplication. So 1/2 is going to change depending on what a is and depending on what b is. Okay? So I have no constants here, and that is okay if you do not have any constants. Okay? The next one is variables, and remember those are letters that represent unknown values. So do you see any letters here? I see 3 letters here. I see A, B, and C. So those are all variables. All right, we're looking for coefficients, and remember those are numbers that are being multiplied by a variable or variables. Okay. So when I look at my variables, is there a number next to it? Is that variable being multiplied by a number? Let's look at C. Is C being multiplied by a number? Yes, it's going to be 3. So 3 is going to be one of our coefficients. If we look at A, is A being multiplied by a number? Yes, it is. Surprisingly, it is. And as well as B. B is also going to be multiplied by a number. Which number is A and B going to be multiplied by? If you remember the distributive property that we talked about when we talked about GCF in the fall, it's actually 1/2. 1/2 is going to eventually be distributed to both terms, so they're both going to have that multiplication problem, and they're going to both be multiplied by 1/2. So 1/2 is also a coefficient. All right, if I move to my next one, factors. Again, we look at our coefficient, we look at our variables, and then we want to look at what's being multiplied together. So if I look at my 3 times C, our factors are going to be quite simple. They're going to be 3 and C, because 3 is being multiplied by C. Now, you're thinking, oh yeah, 1/2. It's definitely going to be a factor, because you're going to multiply it times A and B. So that's going to be a factor, right? Unfortunately, it's going to be incorrect, and this is why. It's because we have this parentheses here. If we didn't have the parentheses here and we did distribute that, then it'd be a little bit different. So if we actually distribute this out, you would have 1/2 A plus 1/2 B. Sure, these would be factors, and you have 1/2 A, 1/2 B, this would be factors. But because we have not done the distributive property yet, we don't have any factors. We still have the coefficient because that will be multiplied, but no factors yet because we have not simplified that yet. Okay, so we have no factors, no more factors. All right, now let's talk about terms. Okay, I am going to rewrite this down here just so it's a little bit neater. So we have 1/2 A plus B minus 3C. All right. Notice I have an addition sign and I have a subtraction sign here. So I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to have a couple of terms. Okay. I can definitely say that when I look to the right of the subtraction sign, that 3C is going to be a term. So I do want to section that off because this is going to be a term. If we look at this addition sign, we're like, yeah, B is going to be a term, and then 1/2 A is going to be a term. We want to also remember that it's in parentheses, okay? When it's in parentheses and we have a number next to it, we're going to multiply. We're eventually going to multiply. So this whole thing right here is a multiplication problem just because of these beautiful parentheses here. Because we have a multiplication problem here, we cannot separate the A and the B. They've got to stay together. They're also in the parentheses. We also want to keep those together, okay? So this whole thing is a term. This 1/2 A plus B, this whole thing is going to be a term. So we actually only have 2 terms in this problem, surprisingly. All right, these are the only examples that I have for y'all. This is, I know a question like this will be on the homework, especially the coefficient and factors part of this example. So please, if you need to rewind and rewatch, definitely rewind and rewatch because this will be on your yellow homework because it's a yellow piece of paper today. Okay. All right, when you are putting this into your notebook, okay, you want to glue this in. Okay, when you do the purple one, okay, you want to take your purple foldable, put it upside down, tap, tap, so everything falls, okay, and you want to put the staple right on top, okay, so you want to put the staple right inside the paper, and it should look like that with the staple in it, okay. I would also recommend doing the staple before you glue it, okay. If not, just open your foldable and just staple like that if you happen to have glued first, okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your teacher, meaning myself. You can also refer to my master notebook if you need any extra help. So hopefully this helps. All right, guys, have a great day.